everybody's really familiar with Andy, Professor Andy.
Yeah,
But I will allow you to take the floor, sir. I know this is going to be a
great,
great topic.
great. Thanks, Glenn. Thanks everybody for joining. So my goal with these masterminds is to keep it short, but at the same time create a highlight for you on something that you can take away and utilize, in your day-to-day work. So today I'm focusing on survivor benefits. I think if we went through and looked at all of the different elements of the Social Security retirement, specifically the retirement system, and force rank them from most simplistic to most complex, or should I say most complex to most simplistic. This is far and away number one in terms of complexity. And my goal today is really to kind of highlight just how complex it can be and point you in the direction of how you can address survivor benefits without having to understand all that complexity. So in some ways, this is going to be a commercial for us and what we do. But at the same time, I'm going to revisit some of the things we've already talked or you've already learned about in the class itself. So I'm going to share my screen. Can you all see well, I can see now that you'll be able to see it here. Just a minute. Here we go. All right. So let me just launch this. And Glenn, are the folks able to ask questions if they want to, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody's got
Okay.
control to be able to
Okay,
turn on
good.
their audio, turn on their cameras. So is that okay, Andy, if people just kind of jump in as they have
Yeah.
questions?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the idea. This is open forum, talk through these topics. So again, what I want to focus on in the short time we'll have together today are spousal benefits. And the first thing I'm going to talk about very briefly is spousal benefits versus survivor benefits. If you're out there talking about Social Security on a daily basis like I am, you'll know that people constantly kind of conflate these two benefits, spousal versus survivor. So we'll talk about those. Then we'll talk about under full retirement age and how the earnings test applies even to survivor benefits. Third, we'll talk about benefit calculations and the overall complexity. Lastly, we'll talk about optimization strategies. Not lastly, fourth, we'll talk about optimization strategy. And lastly, when in doubt, reach out. And I'm going to give you an example of just how opportunities present themselves for you to really show the value of the education that you have and the support you have from this team when dealing with current and prospective clients. So first thing is really a revisitation, I'm sure, of a lot of the things you already know, but things to keep in mind. To me, the key with Social Security is to keep it all straight is I have to kind of compartmentalize things. So the first thing I talk about when I talk about survivor benefits and spousal benefits is I make sure that everybody understands that a spousal benefit is a living benefit, right? So how do we separate one from the other? The spousal benefit is a living benefit, right? It's not payable prior to age 62, and the maximum amount it can be is up to 50% of a fully insured spouse's, I should have said PIA, right? So you'll remember from your studies, a spousal benefit, the maximum it can be is 50% of the other spouse's PIA. So a quick example would be, let's say we have one fully insured spouse and their primary insurance amount, which is their retirement income benefit at full retirement age, is $3,000. We know whether that second spouse is fully insured or not, at full retirement age, they're going to be entitled to at least 50% of spouse one's benefit, or $1,500 in my example, right? So there's very rarely rules of thumb in Social Security, but one of the rules of thumb that I can point to is if you have one fully insured spouse, then the household Social Security income at a minimum is going to be 1.5 times that higher PIA, right? So if spouse two is not fully insured, doesn't have their own benefit, in my example, they would get $1,500 fully from a spousal benefit. If they had their own benefit, but it wasn't equivalent to $1,500, then they'd get bumped up to $1,500 through the spousal. But again, that's a living benefit. that's paid on the earnings record of the higher benefiting spouse, right? So both spouses have to be alive for that benefit to be paid. What they call a WIB, or a widow's income benefit, I'll call a survivor benefit, is a death benefit. It is payable as early as age 60, so you don't have to be 62 or 50 if disabled, right? So if you've got someone who is widowed, they're under 60, but they're deemed by Social Security to be disabled, they can begin collecting a survivor benefit as early as 50, but at a minimum, it's 60. The difference here is, unlike a spousal benefit, you actually receive a full benefit, but it's one benefit, right? So you go from, under the spousal scenario, you're talking about 1.5 benefits, to the survivor scenario where you're talking about a whole benefit, not a half a benefit, but you only get to retain one of the two benefits. So things to just kind of delineate in your mind: a living benefit versus a death benefit. That's what we're talking about. And again, you'll find that people confuse these two. The questions we get in our Ask the Experts email all the time, people are kind of conflating these two things, and I get why it happens. There's a lot to it. But the other thing I would say, just as a way to kind of keep it compartmentalized, is a spousal benefit is in addition to, right? So it's above and beyond your own benefit. It's in addition to. Whereas survivor benefit is either or. You can't get both. You get to take one or the other, and obviously you're going to take the one that's most beneficial for you. Now, the other piece that people continually kind of conflate as it relates to Social Security is the taxation of benefits and the earnings test. So one thing I always want to revisit with people when we talk about survivor benefits is, like any other benefit, if that benefit is being paid to a recipient who has yet to attain full retirement age, the earnings test applies. So if I've got a surviving spouse entitled to a Social Security survivor benefit at age 60 and chooses to keep working, they are going to be subjected to the earnings test, right? So for 2025, for every $2 of gross earned income over this $23,000, $23,400 threshold, $1 of Social Security benefits will be withheld or recaptured later if we haven't managed the withholding piece properly. Okay, so just always remember that any benefit being paid to a beneficiary who has yet to attain full retirement age is going to be subjected to the earnings test, including a survivor benefit. Now, the ARF does apply. So if I take a WIB, if I take a widow's income benefit or survivor benefit at 60, and I keep working, and I end up having to forfeit benefits, the adjustment to the reduction factor, which you learned about in class, will apply automatically without any effort required of the beneficiary. Automatically, the adjustment to reduction factor will happen when they attain full retirement age. So why do I bring this up? Let's say you've got a widow who maybe the survivor benefit at age 60, I'm making up numbers, but let's say the survivor benefit is $2,000 a month at 60. And based upon what they're earning, they'd have to forfeit $1,000. Let's say their monthly benefit's $2,000. The survivor benefit's $2,000. The reduction as a result of the earnings test is $12,000, or half of that $24,000. Same rules apply, right? They wouldn't get any checks for the first 6 months, but then from month 7 through month 12, they're going to get $2,000 a month, right? They're going to get 12 out of the 24,000. Social Security still does not issue any partial checks. So the way they'll manage the forfeiture is they'll hold checks until that happens. But then they get to $2,000 a month for the balance of the year. Just like as if it was your own retirement income benefit, if the survivor receives that money but loses 6 checks, and they do that, say 4 times between 60 and FRA, then they've lost 24 months worth of checks or 2 years worth of checks. Automatically, when they attain full retirement age, there's going to be an adjustment to the reduction factor. And now it's going to be as if they took survivor benefits 24 months later from a benefit calculation perspective, right? So from FRA going forward, the survivor benefit will now be the equivalent of what it would have been had they actually waited to take the survivor at age until age 62. So again, these are the same concepts that we go through in the class. I'm just talking about how they apply specifically to a survivor benefit. By the way, the reduction factors are slightly different. Here they are, based upon your year of birth, right? So if you're a survivor, you're collecting a survivor benefit and you were born in 1962 or later, then the monthly reduction is 0.339. So the way I've always explained it is for every month you take prior to full retirement age, any benefit, there's going to be a fractional reduction for every month you opt to take benefits prior to full retirement age. Now, full retirement age, you'll remember from your studies, the full retirement age for a survivor is slightly different than what it is for a retirement income benefit. So, for instance, you end up with an FRA of 67 if you were born in 1960 or later from a retirement income or for a retirement income benefit, but for a survivor benefit, it's 67 or later. But it's a flat reduction factor where under the retirement income benefit, it's a certain percentage for the first 36 months and then a different percentage for every month thereafter. It's the same fractional reduction for each month you take benefits. And we're just showing how would it impact, $1,000 monthly benefit. You'd get $796 if you took as early as possible. Okay, so it gives you an idea what that reduction, if you wanted to convert it to a percentage, what that reduction would be. Now, when I say Social Security survivor benefits are complex, I'm going to walk you through, not because I expect you to memorize this or learn this, and I'll be happy to share this presentation through Glenn and the team at DMI when we're done, but really to just kind of emphasize how complex it is. So these are the rules as it relates to how to calculate a survivor benefit, and they go like this. So if spouse the deceased spouse dies at full retirement age or older and is never filed, then the surviving spouse, if they're at FRA or older, they get the PIA plus any accumulated DRCs. If the surviving spouse is younger than FRA when the first spouse passes away, they get the PIA plus any accumulated DRCs less the age reduction, right? Because the beneficiary, is going to be under FRA. So the reduction we just saw. If the first spouse passes away before attaining full retirement age and never filed, then the survivor benefit for the surviving spouse is the PIA. What about if the first spouse passes away and they're under FRA and they took a benefit early, so it was permanently reduced? The survivor, if they're at FRA, they're going to get the greater of the reduced benefit, or 82.5% of the primary insurance amount, what the PIA would have been for the deceased spouse had they waited until FRA to take. Now, what if the deceased spouse dies prior to FRA and took a reduced benefit? There are two steps to consider. One, calculate 82.5% of the PIA compared to the reduced WIB and RIB at which time, at the death, which is the reduced benefit. Sorry. Apply rule, or two, apply rule which requires the following. So part of what I'm highlighting here, again, is just how complex this is. So, one of the things I try and talk about when we go through the Masterminds stuff is really the application of the knowledge. So I would tell you, I talk about Social Security every day. We've written a book. I built a software platform. I never have ever once tried to calculate on my own a survivor benefit of any kind for anybody. because it's just too complex and I don't want to be responsible for the numbers that I come up with. So my recommendation is you can share this with somebody and say, this is the process I have to go through to arrive at that number for you. And as a result, I'm a little skittish about trying to arrive at that number myself. So I'm going to instruct you to go to the Social Security Administration and request them to provide you with a table. They will produce a table showing the survivor benefits, right? The widow income benefit or the widow insurance benefit at various ages. I wouldn't do anything as it relates to an analysis or provide a recommendation until the client brings those numbers to me directly from the Social Security Administration. So it is a table, like I said. It's pretty simple, but at the same time, now you know you're relying on the numbers they provided instead of trying to calculate them on your own. Now, just for what it's worth, one of the things you're going to end up coming across the more you talk about Social Security is you're going to come across some people, some claims representatives at Social Security that, frankly, are incompetent. And it's going to come, the more you talk about it, the more frequently it's going to happen. So we had one of the advisors we work with call in the other day with a client on the phone. The client is recently widowed, went down to the field office, the Social Security field office I think it's in Providence, Rhode Island, actually. And the claims representative told this 60-year-old woman whose husband just passed away that she's not eligible for widow income benefits yet, that she has to wait until 62. So, of course, the client, not armed with the knowledge that we have, left the meeting, reached out to the advisor and said, they told me you're wrong. I can't get a benefit today. I have to wait until I'm 62. So right away, he contacts us. We get on the phone and we explain, unfortunately, the claims representative at the field office has conflated retirement income benefits with widow benefits or survivor benefits. Provide the chapter and verse from the program operations manual, which speaks directly to the eligibility for a survivor benefit, armed her with the information she needs to go back to that same field office and have a conversation with the claims representative and explain not only are they entitled to the benefit, they were entitled to it for several months now, and that they need to not only calculate the numbers, but produce the record of her original visit. So they'll backdate that claim, and she can get that back payment from the time that she's missed. So I share that with you just to say anecdotally, not only can you help your clients make better decisions about when and how to take Social Security benefits, but you can help them kind of manage the people they depend on at times for the information that they need to ultimately make those decisions. And survivor benefits, again, because of their complexity, are one of these areas where we don't want to attempt to calculate those benefits on our own. I mean, certainly you're welcome to spitball, but I would be careful not, again, to try and calculate a definitive benefit on your own. Like I said, you'll see the table that they provide. It's very simple. It's a spreadsheet-based tool. They print out, hand it to you, and you have an actionable figures now that you can work with. Once the benefit options are calculated, my advice, as always, by Social Security is then you can talk about the recommendations you have for them relative to when to take which benefit and how. So a couple things to keep in mind you want to make note of. Your deceased client, your widowed client can take a survivor benefit as early as 60, like we talked about. And in my estimation, if their benefit in particular in the end is going to be worth more than the survivor benefit, there's absolutely no reason not to take the survivor benefit early, even if they're going to suffer a reduction as a result of the earnings test. I'd call it, free money, right? It's cash flow they're going to get that they're not going to get if they wait. They're going to give it up. So whether they get it all or they get a reduced amount, there'd be no reason for them not to take it, especially if their own benefit in the end is going to be the benefit they choose to leverage for the balance of their lives. The other thing to keep in mind is you cannot earn delayed retirement credits on a survivor benefit. So let's say you have two spouses, they're both at full retirement age, and they have comparable PIAs. You can delay taking your benefit in favor of taking your spouse's benefit at full retirement age, and that would act as the survivor benefit. And while you let your benefit delay, or while you delay the taking of your benefit can accumulate delayed retirement credits. However, if you tried to do it in reverse, and it seemed on the surface that maybe it was better to take your benefit early and let your deceased spouse's benefit grow, that's not going to work. If your deceased spouse passed away and hadn't accumulated any DRCs, you cannot accumulate DRCs after, on a survivor benefit, after the death of that spouse. So in my example, it wouldn't make sense to take your deceased spouse's benefit, or wouldn't make sense to take your benefit now if they're comparable, and let the deceased spouse's benefit grow, because it's not going to grow, because you cannot earn delayed retirement credits on a deceased spouse's benefit. So now, conversely, if the deceased spouse was already 70 and hadn't taken benefits, then of course, all of the DRCs are going to be included in the calculation for the widow benefit, meaning the surviving spouse is always going to keep the greater in the end of the two benefits. If the deceased spouse is already 70, hadn't taken benefits, and those DRCs added to the PIA make that benefit considerably more than yours, then yes, you can take it now and you'll get all the DRCs. But you just cannot delay taking a survivor benefit, right? Your deceased spouse's benefit, in anticipation of earning DRCs on that benefit value. It's not allowed. So you cannot, I don't know how else to explain it, you cannot accumulate DRCs after the death of the spouse. Any DRCs that would have otherwise been credited and payable, so if the deceased spouse passed away at 68 and 6 months and hadn't taken benefits, those DRCs are accumulated on the calculation of that benefit, or they're applied to the calculation of that benefit when they determine what is the actual benefits for survivor purposes. In that instance, the benefit that you'd be able to potentially take as a survivor in that instance would be the 68 and 6 month benefit value on my example, because they had accumulated, right? Even though the person hadn't taken benefits, they're still accumulating for every month you delay. So, important thing to keep in mind. Now, I've seen many instances, again, where it makes sense. I'll take my benefit, or pardon me, I'll take the widow benefit now, even if I'm experiencing some kind of reduction as a result of the earnings test, and I'll take that till whatever age. I'll take it to maybe my benefit's better at FRA, and I trade it for the FRA benefit. Maybe I wait till 70 and trade it at 70. Maybe we've talked about this, maybe I've got different people I'm potentially independently entitled from. I want to look at all of those benefit values and decide which one is the best for me. So if I'm an independently entitled divorced spouse and I have 2 or 3 former spouses that I'm technically independently entitled from, and one of them I start taking benefits, and then another one passes away, and that benefit's greater, I can drop one and pick up the other. I can't collect both at the same time. I can't simultaneously collect 2 benefits, but I can drop one in favor of the other. So whether it's my benefit or another former spouse's benefit who I'm independently entitled from, I have that option. So once you have all the benefit calculations in your hands, then you can go back and look at, what do I want to take when, so long as you understand you're going to deal with the earnings test if they're under FRA, and you cannot accumulate DRCs on a survivor benefit beyond any DRCs that had already accumulated prior to the death of that spouse. Last thing, yeah.
I just wanted to step in for a second and just ask everybody if they had any questions about what's been discussed so far, or if maybe they've got some hypothetical scenarios, maybe based on reality, that they want to ask about.
Yeah, and I've got one more slide, and then I was going to open it up to questions.
Oh, okay.
So I think this will give you guys an example of kind of how we can help. But my final line here is, when in doubt, reach out to us. That's a really important part of the partnership that we have in our value proposition. And I want to just share with you one recent example of what we'll come across in terms of questions that can be highly complex and frankly overwhelming that we can assist with. So I'm going to put this up and I'm going to let you read it, and then I'll show you the answers. I'm going to take a minute. Hopefully you can all see this, and then I'll show you how we responded to this question. So hopefully you've had a chance to review that. And I just want to point out, so we support anybody who becomes a member. This particular person happens to be an advanced salesperson on one of the carrier advanced sales teams, and they from time to time will bring us questions that, like all of us, they think based upon their knowledge, they think they know the answer, but they don't want to respond until they can say definitively that they're right. So this was a great question. I think this isn't something that you come across. It's not a run of the mill question. And I have to say that in this instance, the financial advisor's coworker was really kind of on the ball as it relates to possibilities, and brought this to their attention. And ultimately, they brought it to the advanced sales team, who brought it to us. And you can see they kind of gave us a rundown of what they think, but again, they wanted to hear from us what is the actual answer. So this was our answer. I'll let you read this real quick, and then again, we'll talk about not only this particular scenario, but any other scenarios you want to talk about. So hopefully I'm giving you enough time to read. So I just want to point out what you see here is this is the level of detail that we'll get into in response to these types of questions. So this is a reference to the Social Security Administration's Program Operations Manual, which is codified like the law. And we're referencing here where you can find this actual, for lack of a better term, legislation, or this directive within the Social Security manual that speaks directly to this question that the advisor had. But again, really heads up on the part of the advisor to recognize there may be an opportunity there and ask about it. And great opportunity for us to support this advanced salesperson, and they go back with this answer, right? There's no reference to us. They're going to take this answer. They're going to respond to the financial advisor that they were supporting, and they're going to get all the credit for the value that they're providing. And it's the same thing with all of you. So anytime somebody brings you, a question that you feel like, I think I know the answer, but let me check, this is the way we're going to respond, especially in an instance like this where it's much more complex. And we're going to arm you with the knowledge you need to provide the answer yourself and be positioned as the expert with that prospect or client. So I'll stop there. Again, I try to do the masterminds in a more abridged version. We're at 12:30, 12:33. Wanted to be done in about 30 minutes. So hopefully I've hit the high notes. The takeaways for you on this, frankly, are highly complex, maybe the most complex aspect of the Social Security retirement system. Don't tackle it alone. Social Security is the first line of defense. Get the numbers from Social Security, then connect with us, and we will help you figure out the ultimate plan for when we're going to take which benefits and why. And even though it's not in our software, meaning we don't have a software platform that we can actually illustrate this particular approach in, if you will, we are going to help you walk through it so you can present it effectively to the client, help them understand how it's going to impact the broader plan. So I'll stop there, see if anybody has any questions, and I hope that you're coming away with this feeling a little more dangerous about what we can do to help you and specifically help you address the most complex element of Social Security, and that's the Social Security widow benefits. Any questions? Glenn? All right.
Yeah, no questions for me, but you guys, if y'all want to go ahead, just unmute yourselves and go ahead and speak. No, it's not necessary to raise your hand or anything.
Hey, Andy.
Yes.
Hey, Jay Blanchard here. How you doing?
Hey, Jay. How you been?
Not too bad, my friend. I've got a widow who's 55, believe it or not, and her husband died over 12 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So she's been proposed to. I told her not to get married till she's 60 because she can get the full benefits, but I can't seem to get a number out of Social Security.
Mm-hmm. So she's inquired about what the survivor benefit is projected to be,
Yes.
and they won't give her a number?
They haven't given her a number, no. And also what I was trying to figure out, because I have the report from when her husband was, prior to his passing.
Yeah.
And their projections, original projections. And one of the things I didn't know was, can I extrapolate out those numbers? Will there be cost of living adjustments, just as if he was, 12 years ago? By the way, and he was 10 years her senior.
Okay. Gotcha.
So he right now would have been, let's see,
67?
66, actually, he
Okay.
would have been. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the stuff that baffles me, Jay, honestly. Like, why they would give somebody, there's absolutely no reason why they can't produce for her a number, at least a projection. I don't understand that at all. My guess is she's just not talking to the right person. But
yeah, yes. I figure that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the call is, so in that instance where he passed away at say 55, they're going to calculate a benefit based upon what his PIA would have been, and then based upon that, they're going to apply all the rules that we've just seen here. Now, unless she's fully disabled, she's not qualified yet to collect the benefit. But they should. I mean, at a minimum, if you said you had his PIA, do you have his earnings history?
Oh yeah, I got all that.
You have his earnings history. If you want to send me his earnings history, I'm happy you and I could jump on a call and kind of go through that. So there's a table I'll share with you that it's manual, but we can just run through it. And I hate to say it, we can spitball what the number would be. She's still 5 years away, but as far as trying to think about how to answer the question. So what happens is, and I'm going to defer to Cheryl on this particular element and make sure I'm right about this. But if we were talking about a retirement income benefit, the way the COLAs are applied before you reach the first year of entitlement is they're applied to the bend points. Once you reach that first year of entitlement, they're applied directly to the benefit value. But either way, you're getting the same end result, if you know what I mean. So I'm certain that they are applied to widow benefits, whether they apply directly or indirectly. I don't know once he passes, but it doesn't matter. They're definitely going to be applied, and we can make a and accounting for that too. So if you want to try and get together with me, send me an email. Maybe we can get on a Zoom one day next week and work through it, and we can at least give you an idea what that number is going to look like.
That'd be fantastic. I'll pull all my stuff together and shoot you an email before the end of the week. I really appreciate it.
All right, Jay. Yeah, sounds great. I look forward to it. And we'll just get on a Zoom.
Perfect. Appreciate it.
You
Talk
bet.
to you soon. Thank you.
All right, Jay, you bet. Anybody else? All right. Duff, no questions? You usually have some good questions. Silent today. All right, well, Glenn, I'll forward you this presentation as well
Okay.
so that you can circulate it to the group. But hopefully you guys got something out of this. Again, I like to get into the nitty-gritty. I think you all know that. This is almost a word of caution. getting into the nitty-gritty, even though I just agree with Jay that we'll do that, is suboptimal. You want to get the numbers from Social Security when you can. But hopefully you feel better about how to explain benefits, the impact of the earnings test. If you get a reduction in benefit, can it somehow come back to you through the ARF? Yes. Obviously, COLAs, like we talked about, they are applied to those benefits just like they are any other benefit. You can take benefits. You can turn on and turn off benefits. You could take a WIB, then transfer to a RIB, then go back to a WIB. Just in this example, we talk about it right here that I gave you. So, Glenn, I don't know if you had a chance to look at that, but I think you would find, and your team would find that interesting as well, to see the kind of questions you can get when you really talk about this all day, every day. So this advanced salesperson, is talking about Social Security probably even more than the traditional advisor, right? Because that's their role at this company that they work for. But these are the kind of questions you can come up against, and there's nothing more, in my opinion, there's nothing more impactful than being able to take a question like that and show them here's the answer definitively to set yourself apart from the competition.
That's huge. Yeah. So you've got this presentation, Andy. Was there another document you had mentioned as well earlier in the presentation that you said you were going to share?
I don't think so.
Just,
I did. I misspoke.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I misheard. So but that's great. We can share that presentation with everybody. In the next couple of days, we'll have an email go out, and then also remind everybody when the next session is going to occur. And as Andy said, reach out to either Andy or your VP with questions, and we're here to support you. So we really appreciate you guys being here today.
Glenn, can I throw out one suggestion before we go?
Yeah.
I'm always open to thoughts and ideas on what you want to hear more about in these mastermind sessions. So if there's something in particular that you're bumping up against that you want to take a deeper dive into, that's what these are all about, is taking a deeper look at the individual elements, if you will, of Social Security. So always open to any suggestions or ideas about what you guys as a group would like to hear about.
Yeah, and if it's an issue for you, it's probably an issue for somebody else. So
100%.
It'll probably become a topic. So we'd love that feedback.
Great. All right. Well, thank you everybody for the time. Glenn, thank you for the opportunity. I hope it was helpful, and I look forward to doing this again soon.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks,
Have
Duff.
a great day, guys.
Mike, have a good one.
Bye.